Jamaica not being in Africa doesn't make sense to me. It's like 77 plus 33 is not 100. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Why am I just finding this out? Why? And I was seriously ready to argue with my friends. My friend was telling me and I was like, bro, you're lying. I was laughing at her. Why? Anytime I tell people, oh, I'm from Nigeria, they're like, oh, I have a friend from Jamaica. It's not even in Africa. Why didn't I know that? Why didn't you go tell me that?
Let me ask you a serious question and be honest. Before today, how many of you thought Jamaica was in Africa? Don't lie, because Africans all over the internet are losing it right now. Maps have been shown, Google has been opened, teachers have tried, and still, emotionally, Jamaica feels like one of us. So why is this truth so hard to accept? Let's talk about it.
This is spiritual. The love Africans have for Jamaicans, it's really, really spiritual, people. I know a lot of you are going to think that's crazy, but that is true. It's like you cannot convince an African at some point in their lives that Jamaica is not an African country. They will literally pull out pictures of Jamaicans and they'll say, yeah, and they are African. Then you'll say to them, okay, point where they are in Africa, and then they'll be all blank and they'll be traumatized when they discover that Jamaica is actually an island in the Caribbean. I was traumatized when I discovered that, so I'm talking from experience. So then my ancestors say to me, it's spiritual. The connection between Jamaicans and Africans is spiritual. That connection that broke between African Americans and Africans because of slavery did not break with Jamaicans. It remained like the cord, the umbilical cord between the Africans and the African Americans. It broke during slavery, but it did not break with the Jamaicans. It remained strong. They remained tagged into the source. So what was the reason? What is the reason that they were tagged into the source and remained tagged into the source? The women, they had very strong metaphysical scientists who were women, and they were like leading them. It's almost like one of their leaders, one of their very first leaders who did what she did. I think I remember her name. Wherever she was very, very metaphysically strong. She did rituals along with others which kept the cord, the umbilical cord, intact, because she thought one day they were going to be able to get on boats and go home. And she didn't want to lose that connection. Literally, yeah, I'm listening to them talking. Literally, that's why for Africans, Jamaica is in Africa, no matter what. It's a spiritual connection that has remained over hundreds of years and will remain for eternity. Isn't that fascinating? I think that's amazing. I think that's cool. And yes, I still think it's a travesty that Jamaica is not in Africa.
South Africans are okay with things not making sense. For example, Jamaica's not in Africa, Haiti's not in Africa, Brazil's not in Africa, but I've come across some South Africans that in theory know this, but in reality, like, they don't compute it or process it, right? For example, I'll tell people about my Jamaican friends. I'll be like, oh my gosh, like, Jamaicans have housed me and made me feel more welcome and helped my transition a lot more than, you know, some African people. And they'll be like, why are you separating Jamaicans from Africans? Is Jamaica not in Africa? I'm like, bro, we were in the same geography class. You know that Jamaica is not in Africa. And then people would have to dig in their knowledge and be like, oh my gosh, in theory, yes, I do know that it's not in Africa, but the way that Jamaican culture, Haitian culture, even some people think that Brazil, not as often Brazil comes up, but some people do think that Brazil is in Africa. Like, they would know it in theory that it's not in Africa, but then practically and realistically, like, their brains just see these cultures, the spirituality within these cultures, their expression, the color, the ceremoniousness, the way that Africans feel loved when they're in these countries, and they'll be like, yeah, this must be an African person, even though the theory we learned in class is cognitively dissonant to that, or it is incongruent to the information that their brain feeds them. And I find that so fascinating. And I think then when you approach the African continent or South Africa, knowing that things make sense not making sense, knowing that people can maneuver the countries in the world in their heads to make sense of identity in the world, I think it lets you approach South African ignorance differently, and South African history and political context differently, because there is a context as to why people think that Jamaica is in Africa.
When Africans first find out Jamaica is actually in the Caribbean, the reactions are priceless. Some laugh, some argue, some straight up say, no, that map is wrong. Because how can a place that moves like us, sounds like us, think like us be so far away? Geographically, Jamaica is Caribbean. Emotionally, Africans say, nah, that's family. And that confusion didn't come from nowhere. Here is where things get serious. Most Jamaicans are descendants of enslaved Africans, taken from West and Central Africa. Their language was suppressed. Their names were changed. Their land was taken away. But something powerful happened. They kept the spirit. African rhythms became reggae. African resistance became rebellion. So when Africans see Jamaicans, they don't see strangers. They see lost relatives who survived. That's not geography. That's history. Let's talk culture. The music has got African roots. The food, African techniques. The dance, African movements. The pride, very African. Even the confidence. People call Jamaicans arrogant, but Africans recognize that confidence. It's the same energy that says, I know who I am, I survived, I am still here. So when Africans say Jamaica feels African, they are not confused. They are recognizing familiar energy. And now let's be honest. Some Africans don't want to accept the truth at all. They say, colonial borders don't count. Africa is everywhere. The Caribbean is basically Africa overseas. And you know what? That denial isn't ignorance. It's love mixed with pride. Nobody wants to accept that something so familiar is technically far away. Here is the truth. We all need to sit with Jamaica descent. Africa is the root. The Caribbean is the branch. Different lands, shared bloodlines, connected stories, and understanding that doesn't divide us. It actually brings clarity and respect. Now I want to hear from you. Did you ever think Jamaica was in Africa? Or does it still feel African to you? Drop your thoughts in the comments, but keep it respectful. This is about connection, not competition. If you enjoyed this conversation, like, subscribe, and share, because culture runs deeper than maps.